Most of this happened in North Carolina, and these are the big highlights of everything that I've been through. I've always been a little different than most people in my family. My grandmother and I call ourselves the black sheep of the family. I was always very clingy, and I never really liked being away from my mom or my grandmother. The first real feeling of something different was my childhood home. I never liked going into my bedroom. I would literally cry and beg to not go in there. When I came out, I had to wash my hands with soap and water over and over again. So much so that my hands would crack and bleed. We had a basement. I wouldn't mind even going into the basement, but I never, ever wanted to go into that bedroom. And I never slept alone in that bedroom. The closet in the bedroom sometimes had a weird red dot that would flash. I told my parents about it, and they looked through the closet up and down, and they never really found anything, but it kept happening. Eventually, it got so bad that I couldn't take it anymore. I had my dad sleep with me at night, or I had my mom sleep with me at night. Sometimes it would stay on, where it was flashing. I would try to wake them up, and they would be like, "You're dreaming." They never saw it, but I saw it. I had intense nightmares as a child, but I know for a fact that wasn't a dream. I just didn't know what to do to convince them that there was something flashing in the closet. I also saw this figure go across my window at night as well. I was way too young to know what the Hat Man was, but he was tall and he had this hat on, and it was this dark figure. My windows, they were higher off the ground. I don't understand how this man would be tall enough to walk past the window, and he was always going the same way. My parents thought I was crazy. They actually thought I was crazy, and they sent me to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist just said that, I've got a big imagination, and they thought that maybe I had OCD from washing my hands too much. That wasn't the case. This bedroom bothered me so much. It got so bad that I ended up sleeping in my parents' bedroom until I was 11. That's really embarrassing to say, but I just couldn't deal with it. My mom, I spoke to her last weekend, and she said that she saw a girl walk in and out of that room, and she never told me this. And I asked why she never told me this, and she just simply said, "I didn't want to scare you." In hindsight, I really wish she had told me this, because I just grew up thinking that I was insane, going to these doctors, being told that I had this and that, and it just bothered me. But she knew, and I just really wish I had someone on my side saying, "You're not crazy." When I was pretty young, I had a bad feeling about this cabin-like house that my aunt and uncle and my cousins lived in. It was a pretty big house, but it was still made of all wood. It was in a secluded area in the Appalachian Mountains. We've all heard lore about the Appalachian Mountains. But one particular time, we, meaning my brother and I, received a Furby for Christmas. I don't even know how my mom found this Furby, but back in the 90s, everybody wanted a Furby. They were really, really hard to find. There were limited amounts of Furbies. It was this whole craze. A Furby was this electronic toy, and it looks kind of like a bird, but not necessarily like a bird. It was covered in fur. It had eyebrows, these giant eyes. It would talk to you, and you could talk back to it.
Hug me.
The Furby would learn from you. And so you could teach it certain words, or it would repeat things.
Boring.
They would kind of copy what you say if you said like certain words.
Where?
To me, they turned out to be evil, like just pure evil.
Me scared.
So the next day after Christmas, we went to visit them. It was just a time for me and my cousins to get together and share Christmas presents. My parents said I could bring my Furby because they knew I didn't really like the vibes of their house. My cousins and I, we all had a sleepover on the floor, under the Christmas tree, in the living room. And my grandmother said goodnight to us. When she left, the Furby started talking.
Hey, party.
She came back, and we all got in trouble for playing with it. And I told her I'd turned the Furby off. She turned it over, made a weird face, and went back to her bed. I was almost asleep when the Furby started talking again.
Okay, me up.
So all of us just kind of shot up and looked at each other. My grandmother came back and said, "What did I just say?" The Furby was sitting on the table where she left it. She took the batteries out and left it on the table to play with the next day. Some time goes by, we were all asleep. The Furby starts making noises again. My grandmother is a very light sleeper, and she comes back into the room. She looks at us, and she looks at the Furby, and she stands still. She put the Furby in a bag and put it outside and locked the door. I was done with that Furby at that point. Any kind of Furby, I would not mess with it because the batteries were already out of the Furby. There's no way that Furby should have been talking at that point. My brother was scared. My younger cousins were scared. It was just a whole ordeal. Of course, my mom and my dad, who had searched high and low to find this Furby, were upset. But there's no way I'm ever touching a Furby again or going near one. I know I'm not the only one who has a story about a Furby that just went off the rails. That's nothing I'm ever going to mess with again.
La la la, la la la, la la la.
Something else weird about my aunt and uncle's house at the time was there was a light snow dusting on the ground when we had come back for a visit. Behind the house, there was a big hill. We were not supposed to go near that hill, so none of us did. I was just walking around and making footprints because we rarely saw snow where I live. It was dead silent, no wind, no birds, nothing. I was just walking around a little further, and then I slipped. It's not like a casual slip on light snow, but it was like someone grabbed my ankle and was dragging me down the hill. It's a steep, steep hill. I'm not even sure what's at the bottom. I think I saw rocks and trees and brush. I'm not sure. I don't want to know. I caught my hand on a rock. I still felt that pull as I was holding onto that rock. I looked over at the door and I saw my aunt and my mom standing at the door. They were talking. They were really into their conversation, but I was screaming so loud. I don't know how I did it, but I dug my feet into the ground. I dug as hard as I could. And then I kind of pushed up until I got my foot on top of that rock. And you know how you are whenever you have a lot of adrenaline and you're just trying so hard and you can feel that adrenaline. And I finally got my shoe on that rock. I just got up and I started running. I ran straight to the door and I was asking my mom, I was like, why weren't you watching me? And she was like, what happened? What happened? And I said, like, I fell down that hill. She was like, oh, you're fine. Nothing happened to you. And I just told her exactly what happened. And nobody really believed me. They think that it was just like a 10-year-old who had just accidentally fallen. But I swear something grabbed me and just like pulled me down. To this day, I still feel it. I know something had grabbed me. Paranormal things kept happening. When I was 13, my youth group went on a ski trip. My mom's best friend and her husband that had come with us were looking to buy a cabin a little bit further down where we were. So my mom went with them and took me and my best friend, who was also their daughter. We went to view the cabin. It was also in the Appalachian Mountains, and the cabin was just gorgeous. It was beautiful. You had really good views of the Blue Ridge Parkway. It was so pretty. But as soon as I stepped into that cabin, I just froze. I swear it felt like I was being touched all over with these icy hands. Of course, I was wearing like winter clothes, but I could feel myself being like grabbed or like being touched. I could feel it on my face and on my back. There was kind of a small staircase because it was like a tiny 2-story cabin. I couldn't even make it up the stairs because I couldn't breathe whenever I got to the stair. It just took all my breath out of me. I kept feeling something touching me, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. We went out to the outside, and there was this porch area where you could look out and see the foliage and everything. And it had a really nice view. It was very, very cool. There was like a bunch of chairs where you could sit out there. We just had fun just kind of running around on there. So we decided to maybe come back the next day and just see what it was like. But at that time, we went back to our little cabins and the ski place where we were at. They decided to go back to see the cabin that they were looking at. They weren't gone very long. They went, and then I guess apparently they came right back. They were just like so upset. And I was like, oh, well, maybe the cabin's been sold already. I don't really know. I'm not really sure what's happening. Then they told me there was a dead crow in the middle of the porch that was out there. And there were rocks in a circle all around this dead crow. There was just like 5 points around this crow. There were deck chairs that were just stacked up. They told me there was probably like 15 chairs there or something like that. But I mean, these chairs were stacked like impossibly high. You would need probably 2 ladders to stack up these deck chairs. Even we went back to look and see what was going on, and I've never in my life seen something so demonic. The crow's blood was everywhere. It was everywhere. It was such a wild situation because I knew there was something wrong with that cabin. People never believe me whenever I say there's something wrong with something, but like, this was terrifying. And it still makes me shiver to talk about it. When I was 15, I started my very first job working in a health food store, and I was so excited and learning where to put things. There was like an upstairs, downstairs situation. It used to be an old firehouse. Ironically, it burned down. Someone bought it, and then they decided to turn it into this health food store. The downstairs was being turned into some kind of like health food type sandwich shop. I didn't really have to go downstairs very often. One day I did have to take something downstairs, and I just kind of like stopped in my tracks. I saw a little girl. I can't explain what I saw in this little girl, but like, it wasn't human. I truly cannot explain what I saw in her that I knew that she was not human. I immediately like ran upstairs and I told my manager. I was like, there's a little girl down there. I don't know what to tell you, but there's a little girl down there. And I was like, I need to go home right now. I need to go. She was like, hold on, just take a breath. Hold on, I'm going to call your mom. I don't understand why she wasn't freaking out, but she called my mom. While I waited, it was running through my head, like, Why is this woman not freaking out like I am? My mom got there and she took us both aside and she was like, okay, listen, your daughter needs to quit this job. She explained that there is a couple of people that work there that have a quote unquote gift. They can see things. I don't know, for lack of a better word, the vibes make people have panic attacks. And that's true. I was having panic attacks all the time, but I thought it was just because, like, I started a new job and, I was just getting used to things. And who wouldn't be really nervous about starting a new job? But she just went on to explain that she had also seen the little girl. Not only her, but like a couple of other members of the staff has as well. One day, there's another gentleman who was putting some things together and a knife was thrown at him out of nowhere. Like there was no one else downstairs, but a knife was thrown at him. And I was like, yep, I'm definitely done with this. The older I get, the more I've kind of accepted that things just happen to me. For instance, I know who's going to call before the phone rings. And, it's not every time, but it happens so often that I just know. Regarding health, I know if something bad is about to happen to someone. And a lot of times I consider this more of a curse than a blessing. When I was younger, my brother and my cousin, they were playing soccer. And I said, Mom, someone's going to break their arm today. She just kind of laughed at me and I said, I'm serious. Someone's going to break their arm today. We pull up to like my brother's soccer practice and my cousin had broken his arm. It's just the wildest things. And it's not necessarily dreams either. I just get this weird feeling that like comes over me. I think a lot of people call it premonitions. At least that's what my mom calls them because she gets these too. I can never change anything that's going to happen because if it's meant to happen, then it's going to happen. There's been times where I know somebody will lose a job or I know they're going to lose a job. And so I kind of gently push them to start applying for other positions. I do predict when there have been like mass layoffs, especially with one of my old companies. This is so crazy to say, but everything was going fine with the company. About 4 months before they did the mass layoffs, I knew something happened. I can't explain the feeling that I get, but something happened. And I was like, they're going to do a mass layoff. I know it. I was like telling a couple of my best friends in the company, and I was like, listen, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but like you really, really need to start applying for like a new job. And so a couple of them did get a new job before all of that stuff happened. So, I mean, that's a win in my book. It comes and it goes, and if it helps other people, then good. But I had this crazy like feeling come over me that somebody's heart is having an issue. I told my entire family, like, you guys really need to check on your heart, make sure your heart is doing okay or something like that. Turns out it was me who was having the heart issue. Then I was diagnosed with something. So it's not always the person, but I know something is about to happen. I know people are going to be pregnant before they even know. I've predicted some of my closest friends' pregnancies. They don't even tell me. I just know it's going to happen because I have certain dreams that relate to them. I know when people around me are going to pass away, especially in my family. It usually comes around about 2 weeks before they're going to pass away. And again, I'm not really sure who it is. I just know it's going to happen. I just had that feeling come over me. There's going to be a funeral. I'm not sure when. It was my great aunt that passed away about a week and a half ago. It's so weird that it happens. And I try not to take it like too seriously because I don't like it. I have a lot of anxiety because of it, and I just don't want to really deal with it because I have a lot of stuff to deal with on my own. Now that I have a daughter, it's become even more pronounced, especially with her. I just know if she's gonna have like a hard day. I know if she's gonna need me at some point. I don't know. It's just so weird to explain. When my daughter was first born, she had this mobile. It was the cutest mobile. Like somebody had given it to us. I don't know if it was secondhand or not. But these days, I'm really nervous about secondhand things just because of what I'm about to say. One night, she was in her crib and her mobile just came on all by itself. I looked at my husband and I was like, "Did you turn on that mobile?" He was like, "No, I haven't even been in there." So I went in and I turned it off. A few minutes later, it started doing the same thing. And I made sure it was turned off. I was like, this isn't happening. This can't be happening. I knew other things had happened in that house, and it was mostly around my daughter. So I don't know if there was something looking after her or something that was trying to mess with her, but I wasn't going to take any chances. I can't deal with stuff like that anymore. I got rid of it immediately because I don't want to have any ghosts around my baby. It was just one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced. But now I know she has like some weird paranormal things happen to her, but she doesn't really want to talk about it whenever anything like that happens to her.